All right, Happy New Year, everyone. The numbers are in for Calypso for all of 2022. I'm Craig Duran with the Duran Group over at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. A lot of information to share with you to sort of recap 2022 very quickly and then look ahead and look at some projections for 2023. So let's get right to a few of the things that we're looking at. The orange line here, this is a chart that is tracking showings in the state of Florida. I like to see this to see where demand is. Notice right here, well, a couple things to pay attention to. Obviously, we're showing less real estate in 2022 than we did in the previous couple of years. You see it was pretty close early in the year through about March, and then demand really started to wane, and then I think it got even more dramatic, especially as interest rates started to move up. This is one thing interesting to pay attention to. This is Thanksgiving, always a little dip around Thanksgiving, but also interesting, right here towards the end of the year, we see a little bit of an uptick right after Christmas time. I looked at the mortgage applications, although plenty of condo purchases are done with cash. Looking at mortgage applications week to week can kind of help us get some sense of overall housing demand. So if I look from August 5th to January 5th, the blue colored line, light gray colored line here represents a purchase index that the Mortgage Bankers of America or the Mortgage Bankers Associations put together. If you really look into this, the purchase index right at the end of October was 160.5. It moved up to 182.5 by the end of December. So that's about a 12 or 13% increase, an uptick, and a pretty good size uptick in demand. So people are thinking about buying. I think the initial shock of the raise in rates has settled somewhat, and people are now just dealing with the reality of what it is. To show you a few, just comparing the newer buildings on the beach so that we're comparing apples to apples. Here's some numbers from last year. We had 12% fewer condos that were actually offered for sale in 2022. The number under contract, we had 35% fewer contracts written in 2022 than we did the year before. We had 30% fewer sales. Of course, that's going to lead to a little less volume. It was 11% less volume, although it was 30% less sales. And why are those numbers so different? Because we saw 27% and a 27% increase in the average sales price. Is one way to represent that prices moved up quite a bit last year. Most of that was done earlier in the first half of the year. Again, 2022 was sort of a tale of 2 years. The first half was very, very intense. The second half was quite the opposite. To illustrate that a little bit, let's back to one of my favorite charts. This tells us a lot. The red line is the number of units for sale. And pay attention here what's happening with the red line and the black line, which represents the number of closings. November, December, January, February, March, we actually had more closings on Gulfront condos happening than the units that were even offered for sale in the market. That's pretty incredible. That's rare that happens. If you were a buyer back January, February, March, if you remember, things were very intense. Buyers really, really wanted to buy. They just had very, very few choices. But you can see by the middle of the year, there were quite a much higher number of condos available for sale. And you can see the black line really fall off, fewer and fewer closings happening. Another way to look at that, this months of inventory number, again, is just such a good number to understand. Remember, 4 or 5 months of inventory represents a neutral market in real estate. It also represents about how long it takes to work through the process of selling something. Seller calling the real estate office and then working through everything to get to a closing. It was taking us on average in January 1/2 of a month to work through the whole process, meaning seller calling office, marketing, showings, contract negotiations, closing. On average, 1/2 a month in January. Less than a month in February, less than a month in March, 1.3, 1.4 months, April, May. Still very, very fast. We slowed to 5-6 months in the middle of the summer. We improved a little bit. One thing I was a little concerned about in November is that we had ballooned to 8.2 months of inventory. 8.2 months of inventory, like it sounds, it would take us 8 months on average to sell something. Very much buyer market territory that should put a lot of pressure on pricing down. We've improved a little bit in December. We're sitting at 4.26 months of inventory, which is neutral. it's a little less downward pressure on pricing. Things are sort of even keel. I would expect prices to stay somewhat stable across the entire Gulfport market. When we talk about Calypso specifically, 67 sales last year. I have these organized by price. I'm going to scroll just really slow. I'm not going to go into each one. You can pick up what you want off each floor plan. Pause the video if you want to take a look. A couple things I will point out. You see quite a few of the $1 million sales that happened early in the year. 1.244 January 7th. We worked on, I think, 2 or 3 of the ones that sold over $1 million. I'm still just in February while I'm scrolling here. $1.3 million in April, 1.175 in May. I think we worked on both of those. Yep. 1.3 million in May, 1.16 in May, and then I don't think we see another $1 million sale. That's one way to look at what's happened in the market. Certainly nothing over $1 million, much less 1.2 or 1.3. It's a good representation of what's happened in the market overall. You can kind of look at the individual floor plan pricing by building. A better way to look at this, if most of you are on our e-alert system, so anytime something happens in Calypso, you'll be sent an email about it. And I can set that up so you receive it anytime something happens, or batch it so you only get it once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, whatever you prefer. So if you don't have that, let me know. It's a nice program because not only do you see what the pricing is, but you can actually click on the individual listing, see the photos, see the descriptions, and see how it compares to something if you own something as well. Looking at Calypso specifically, just like November ballooned in the overall condo market to 8 months, I was really concerned in Calypso because look at some of these numbers. 7.3, 22 months in November. We're in much better shape. We've come back to 6.25 months of inventory, which means it's going to take us about 6 months on average to get something sold. Still not out of the woods. That's probably slightly buyer market territory. If you're thinking of selling, look at this list. We have 26 units for sale right now between all 3 towers. I would probably suggest that a number of these are priced pretty high for the market, so may not be direct competition. So a couple of things if you are thinking about selling in the spring. Plenty of experts are anticipating price depreciation in 2023 in housing. So if that's the case, very possible that January prices are as high as we see all year. If you subscribe to that, a couple things will be very, very important. Marketing has to be great. Professional photography, professional videography, custom websites, all that stuff. You have to not only have that, but it has to be being distributed and advertised correctly so people see it. It can't just be photos on MLS. We're back to being very, very competitive market. The marketing has to be great. From a timing standpoint, people are still shopping. We've written a few contracts in the last couple of weeks. I've got a closing on Thursday, another contract negotiation happening now. So things are happening. Plenty of people, for whatever reason, wait till March or April to take advantage of the spring market. The spring market's already started to happen in condos. And to do it correctly, to have really brilliant marketing, it doesn't happen overnight. You can't call and say, hey, put me on the MLS tomorrow. I mean, we could do that, but to do it correctly, to have a professional photographer, videographer on a good weather day, and to build a custom website, sometimes we can be 5-7 days, sometimes 2 weeks, depending on photographer schedules, weather, all that stuff. So think about that when you're thinking about putting something on the market. It can take a little bit of time just to get the marketing started. Remember, a lot of this marketing has to get to people who are in other parts of the country. When do they see it? I say this almost every year. I can't stress it enough that starting your marketing earlier than you think in the spring will really, really be a good thing. You'll probably have less competition. Plenty of people come to the market in March, April. So that can be better for you, especially right now. You see if there's 26 units for sale in all of Calypso, maybe some other challenges and hurdles to work through. We've really got to so we're back to the fundamentals. And so photos have to be great, videos have to be great, marketing has to be great, pricing has to be very competitive. So still very possible to sell. It's just a little bit slower than it was earlier in the year. I'm a little concerned in Calypso. The longer we hover at 5 or above months of inventory, that really puts pressure on things down. So keep an eye on that. Keep that in mind. If we do see price depreciation this year, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that price depreciation this year. Remember, we don't always recover what we've lost quickly. Even if we lose 8%, 10%, 12% on paper this year, it could take some time to recover. And in real estate, that can be years. That could be 2 or 3 years before it takes time to bottom out, settle, and then for things to move the other way. So if that's in the plan, great. Work through that. A lot of these, I know a lot of you rent these and generate income that way. But if you're thinking about selling or liquidating for some other reasons, think about it sooner rather than later. Or I feel like it's a strong consideration. There's probably as much risk to the downside at the moment as the upside, or even staying stable. So I hope this helps you. I know it's a lot, 12 minutes almost of wrap up and projections, but if you want to be on that e-alert system so that you're getting information about Calypso more regularly, let me know. Either text me 850-527-0221, shoot me an email, craig@durangroupfl.com. Thanks for watching again. Happy New Year. And we're going to obsess over the numbers this year. So every month it's going to be really taking a hard look at what's happening in the market to make sure you guys stay informed. You guys can make better decisions. Thanks.